What is up, fam? Thank you so much for joining us tonight on a very special episode of So Real Sports Talk. We got a very special guest, one of my favorites, to be honest, Mr. Maverick Pallack from All 49ers SI and all things. I guess what's the team you follow for baseball?
The River Cats.
The River Cats, the man in marketing over there with the River Cats. So thank you for making the time again tonight, Mav. I know you're pretty busy during the week, so I appreciate any time that you take to talk shop with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Love talking Niners, so this will be fun.
All right, perfect. Well, there's actually some news to talk about, which is interesting. Just because obviously it's off season. I mean, the combine's about to happen. And John Lynch was there and he answered some questions, did a little bit of a press conference. There was some noteworthy things that were said, Mav. What were some of your biggest takeaways from the John Lynch presser over at the combine?
Well, I think one of the big things people are talking about is the Jimmy G thing. What's up? The Jimmy G part where like they kind of got what they knew they were gonna get when they made that trade, and obviously that first season was definitely worth that pick they traded to get him. And going to 2 NFC championships is, I mean, you can argue all you want that he didn't really earn one of those NFC or the NFC championship win with the amount of times they ran in that game. But he was a stable quarterback, and a second round pick for a quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo isn't the worst thing in the world, especially where the quarterback situation was before they made that trade, where CJ Beathard was the goal quarterback in the future. They kind of had to make a move like that, and I think it worked out. Obviously, people are going to go back to how they didn't win a Super Bowl with him, but he brought new hope to this franchise, and I agree with Lynch. They got what they wanted out of that trade for sure.
Yeah, I mean, 4.5 years of Jimmy to get the amount of wins that they got with him, 2 NFC championship appearances, 1 Super Bowl appearance. It pretty much kind of made or break this whole regime's tenure, right? Because without Jimmy and him playing the way, at least stabilizing the team the way that he did, regardless of how you feel about his play, but they clearly won more with Jimmy than they did with any other quarterback that they brought in, and you can't blame Jimmy for the fact that the regime didn't bring in anybody else, right? And they finally did with Trey, and that was kind of my biggest takeaway, Mav, is this is the first time that I saw John Lynch really seem like he's passing the torch. Because, Shanahan, I think, has many times kind of hinted at maybe Jimmy Garoppolo isn't his quarterback, and, he's not fully excited about Jimmy. The fact that he's flirted with every single quarterback in free agency kind of makes you feel that way. But Shanahan was always that guy that was pretty high on Jimmy Garoppolo, and was always very much about Jimmy's our quarterback. And this was the first time that he kind of was like, speaking about Jimmy in the past tense, as far as he's no longer with the team. There's a lot of interest in him, things of that nature. So this is the first time where he's actively acknowledging that they're shopping him and that he's most likely done with the team. And I think that was one of my biggest takeaways as well.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that Adam Schefter report earlier. I think it was earlier this week. It might have been last week, where he kind of said that it's not a guarantee that they trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and just John Lynch kind of saying his own thing that, like you said, like kind of talking in past tense in the terms of like that it is Trey's car now. It is Trey Lance is the leader, and that was cool to see. Every time they kind of point to the future and a team is honest about it, it's always interesting and fun to think about that future.
Yeah. Want to say what's up, E. Kim. Forgot to acknowledge out loud. Thank you for being in here, James Coombs. Another one of my faves. Jimmy did change the trajectory of this franchise back to winning, though. That does have value. Absolutely, James. I think that, for whatever you say about his play, the fact is he was the quarterback when this team was winning. Get back to at least being a contender and being respected in the league again, versus everybody looking them as a lottery pick kind of team. So I think that's to be said. Another thing that I liked hearing was how high he was talking about Trey, as far as speaking about what they've been seeing in practice, the development of him. It's good to finally hear from the horse's mouth how well Trey is doing, because we've been hearing so much outside noise, Mav, from like Joe Montana, Steve Young, talking about I've talked to players and people aren't excited about Trey. Okay, I was wondering, when are Shanahan or Lynch going to come out and stop this nonsense and actually give that vote of confidence behind Trey Lance? And we finally got to see it, stating, he's developed the way they're everything that they wanted out of him and more. And he even mentioned, that footage that came out, I think Leo put out, and he even acknowledged, some of that practice footage came out, and that was nice to see as well, because we haven't really heard anybody from the team kind of talking Trey up, at least out of John Lynch and Shanahan. So what did you think about hearing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to. I mean, Joe Montana's the GOAT, but I think this whole situation kind of hits close to home for him, and the veteran starter getting kind of pushed out, whether he likes it or not, for the younger, more mobile, exciting quarterback, and in Steve Young and Trey Lance. So it makes sense to me why Joe Montana might want to hold on to Garoppolo a little longer, but especially after watching the Montana doc on Peacock. So that was pretty funny. But yeah, every time John Lynch or Kyle Shanahan says anything about Trey Lance, I'm glued in. Everyone else is glued in, because we didn't get to see as much as I think a lot of people wanted to last year. So like every little nugget, whether it's a practice pass, preseason pass, Houston Texans game film, like everyone wants to see it. So anytime John Lynch says the name Trey or Lance, it's like, it's drop what you're doing and listen.
Absolutely. And I think the last thing that I really took from it was pretty much closing the window on the Debo and Nick Bosa talk. He just made it very, very clear these guys are going to be 49ers moving forward. And that's good to see, because, there's a lot, we've seen the 49ers somewhat toy with premium players in the past. And to hear that they have in their plans to re-sign Debo, to re-sign Nick Bosa, I think that makes the fan base kind of take a breath of fresh air, that we're not going to have to deal with, what we saw with DeForest Buckner, or even when, Kittle was coming up for his talk or his extension talks, there was some like hesitancy there. It seems like this is going to be pretty clear, and it's just about finding a number that both sides it makes sense for, and signing the dotted line. So that was another thing that I really took from the presser.
Yeah, I'll never forget where I was when I saw that DeForest Buckner was traded. And even though I grew up an A's fan where I have no attachments to players, they'll be traded at any moment. You still kind of feel it when your favorite player gets traded. So when Buckner happened, and I get the whole Carmen policy style of doing things, of trading a guy a year too early rather than a year too late. That's how you want to do it for the most part. But this offensive identity kind of runs through what Deebo Samuel can do. And it depends on what his market is. Is he a wide receiver? Is he a running back when he gets that negotiations going? Right. Same with Kittle. Is he considered a wide receiver money, or is he considered just big tight end money? So that's always big. So kind of getting Deebo in the building for the next 4 years, getting Nick Bosa in the building until he's 36. That's, I think, that will benefit both teams, because barring injury, those two guys are two of the best 25 guys in the NFL, probably, if even top 15. Deebo's one of the most is the most versatile, best playmaker. Nick Bosa is the best pass rusher when holds are called. And you got to keep them. You got to keep your good players around. Otherwise, guys won't want to stay there. People will see Deebo Samuel, see Nick Bosa, see Trent Williams, all these great players, and be more willing to take a little less money on the free agent market to go win with this great core, rather than go to a team that is giving one guy big money and can't really do anything else outside of that.
For sure. And it's just good to see. I mean, I think for me overall, Mav, and I don't know how you feel, definitely in the last couple of years, I've come around to really trusting this regime. And I think they were just, John Lynch's statements were just kind of on par for the course. He didn't say anything that really had me scared in any way or uneasy. Everything he said kind of put everything at ease, and seems like they're on the same page and they kind of know what they're doing moving forward. So that actually wasn't the only news that came out in the last few days. So out of nowhere, Mav, we go from just, all talks about Jimmy Garoppolo and no real word from the Jimmy camp or what's going on with Jimmy's health or anything like that, to Jimmy Garoppolo's underneath the knife. He's actually having shoulder surgery, and he's going to be out for 16 weeks of being able to actually throw the ball, which is right up until, I think, training camp for a team. So this is extremely crazy news out of nowhere, because this was a day before the Lynch and the 49er team go into the combine, where a lot of trades, at least the makeup of a trade, are kind of laid out and settled. And all of a sudden, a curveball, to use a baseball analogy, a curveball gets thrown into the storyline, and Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be out for 4 months and have shoulder surgery. So clearly this has to affect his trade value, I would think. But Mav, do you feel like there still is a trade value for Jimmy Garoppolo now when you add a quarterback that's already kind of had injury issues, already kind of like on the older edge of his career versus the younger edge of his career, questionable, at least I guess playing style, and now coming off of a shoulder injury? Can the 49ers even still trade Jimmy?
I'm wondering, I've seen a lot on Twitter if this is a way Jimmy Garoppolo can kind of angle a way to be released, and then he would then get to pick the next team he plays for. Is this shoulder injury could help him in doing that? Especially the timing of it is very interesting in that aspect. But I think as long as he's able to be traded, there will be a market, just because going off of the top quarterbacks available, as of now, I know we'll touch on it a little later. As of now, I'm assuming Kyler Murray is not available. I'm assuming Aaron Rodgers is staying in Green Bay. And I'm assuming if Tom Brady was traded, it would be to the Niners. So he would be with Tampa Bay or nowhere anyways. And then it leaves the uncertainty of Deshaun Watson. And I'm assuming Russell Wilson won't be traded. So that leaves Jimmy Garoppolo, possibly Baker Mayfield, and Teddy Bridgewater as like those top quarterbacks available. And I still find Jimmy Garoppolo as one of the two most desirable in that situation. Not saying a first-round pick this year by any means, but a second-round pick this year. If teams get desperate, a first-round pick next year, you never know, because Carson Wentz went for a first-round pick. And people can go on that last or that possible MVP season. Carson Wentz had that one season, but his most recent years, he was not worth a first-round pick. But the market dictates what it is. This is like what I took freshman year in econ, like supply demand. There's not a lot of quarterbacks. If you can end up getting that late first round pick, mid second round pick, that would be something I think the Niners would pull the trigger on right away. But this shoulder injury does kind of put a wrench in that. And so it might be where they don't get to get a draft pick this year, and they kind of have to hold on to him for a couple months and then make that move 2 months into the offseason, which would obviously hurt the free agency plan. But it's something they could do if they think they would be able to get a 1 or a 2 in 2023.
Got you. So 1 and 2 we're talking high numbers. If you think that, there's going to be a really, really high market for Jimmy. I don't know if everybody agrees with you, Mav. Kim saying Jimmy doesn't have any trade value in my eyes. The 49ers need the cap room now. So I'm assuming he's saying just cut him. James Coombs, this is where I hate to say it can ruin the trade value he had. Raphael 562 Niners trade Jimmy with Greenlaw as a package. That's interesting. I think that would make it maybe a little more appealing. Niner by nature, one of my favorite handles. No one wants Jimmy. So I think here's the thing, Mav. I think people were kind of reaching for a 1 or 2 from the 40 or for a Jimmy trade. that was kind of like the high end that people were expecting. This was pre-surgery. Now that surgery is there, you got to say it's got to affect a little bit, because now you're talking about a team that most likely won't be able to pass a physical before training camp. So now if you're talking about giving up a first or second round asset, you don't know how he's going to respond to the surgery. You don't know how he's going to be after the surgery. You know what I mean? He was already what most of us considered a limited armed quarterback without the surgery. Now, maybe the surgery could make him stronger. Maybe, it'll open up some range of motion and help him, work out a little bit harder and get that arm a little bit stronger. But it can do the opposite, and maybe he's not the same quarterback ever again. You got to think that, I mean, at least for me, I have to assume that teams are going to be more reluctant now to give up higher assets, because you really don't know what you're going to get, and it's already a guy who's been up and down now on top of a surgery that obviously even if it's a quote unquote minor surgery, any surgery is a major surgery, especially when it's to your throwing arm. I find it hard to believe that teams are going to be jumping the gun to now make a trade for a guy like Jimmy, or at least offer that first or second that they may have offered if they thought Jimmy was healthy, now knowing that he's not going to be.
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying and agree with what you're saying. My thing is just what I keep going back on is the best quarterback available. And as of right now, I think you got to assume the Pro Bowlers of Watson, Wilson, Rodgers, and Brady are unavailable to most teams, or would take a king's ransom that most teams aren't willing to pay. Let's just say it's somewhere there. So then it comes with the guys available, and there is the injury concern with Garoppolo, and then what E. Kim said, where they need the cap space. So I could totally see a situation where the Niners value the cap space now more than they would a better draft pick down the line, and they move them right away for a fourth just to get that cap space now, rather than wait and possibly get a second. I understand that thought process, and I think that would be a smart avenue to go down if that's what they need to do to get that cap space. But with all the teams that need quarterbacks, if Tampa Bay needs a quarterback, I don't think he fits that offense, but they need a quarterback. Washington needs a quarterback. Pittsburgh needs a quarterback. We don't know what Cleveland's going to do with Baker Mayfield. I've seen reports that the Vikings are trying to move on from Kirk Cousins. There's a lot of moving pieces in this.
Denver.
Yeah, Denver, obviously. And it's Garoppolo, Baker, Cam Newton, Fitzpatrick. Like those are the type of guys you're going with. So it kind of goes down to fit. And I mean, it depends on how much you trust that shoulder, how much you're willing to go for it. I think the shoulder injury does impact it a little, but if it ends up being a buy or a seller's market where the Niners are the leading or have the best commodity, then that could increase it. First this year, I think is definitely out of the question. I think it would be a first 2023 or a second in 2023 is what I'm thinking it would be.
Damian Lee, thank you for joining in, my guy. I'm assuming trade Jimmy to Pitt for a fourth rounder. We traded Alex Smith for a third round pick and Kendall Hunter. Yeah, I mean, I think if you can get a third or a fourth round, I think that's the highest that you're going to get at this point. Because I think, Mav, you're underestimating the other quarterbacks that are out there, because a guy like Carson Wentz might be available. If you're saying Kirk Cousins is available, and there's guys that you could get that maybe if you're, because with Jimmy, off of surgery Jimmy, you got to say that's taking a flyer. Well, if you're going to take a flyer on a quarterback, there's guys like Mitch Trubisky that's out there, Marcus Mariota that's out there. These are guys that are younger, healthier, that you don't have to give up assets for. So if you're going to take a flyer on a quarterback, why take a flyer when you have to give up assets versus not give up assets? And that's where I think it changes for me, because now all of a sudden I feel the team had to build themselves up to believe that Jimmy Garoppolo was their guy. And now this kind of like bursts any bubble that was there. If there was any bubble, right? Now it's completely, all the air has to be let out, because it's like, okay, this guy that we were already on the fence about, now all of a sudden isn't going to even be able to throw till training camp. And then that's when we're going to find out if, he's even going to be the player that we want him to be. So maybe conditional stuff like you're talking about, where you give up like a fourth and maybe a conditional pick that could turn into something higher based off of playing and how far they get. But yeah, I just don't believe there's much of a market anymore. I think if anything, the 49ers are going to sell really, really low. But conspiracy theory me kind of gets a sense that, Jimmy's team is just like, look, we were very classy this whole time with the 49ers, but you don't get any more from me. Like, this is no longer I'm looking for what's best for you, 49ers. I'm 100% looking for what's best for me. And somebody was talking, I saw this on Twitter, and I'm not exactly sure about the details, but if Jimmy Garoppolo gets cut and doesn't pass a physical, he gets a $7.5 million injury exception. And then this is the part that I'm not sure about. If he signs with another team, I don't know if the 49ers get that money back, or if that gets added on to whatever contract he signs with the team. So say, for example, he gets 7.5 million. Now, if he even signs a contract for like 15 million for 1 year, he's pretty close to what he was going to make under contract if he got traded. But now he gets to be with a team that he actually wants to play for, that he actually has a chance to start with. And maybe that's the play that he's trying to say. He's like, hey, even if I don't make the whole full 25 or 27 million that I was offered or that I was guaranteed if I got traded, even if I get maybe 22 million with the trade exception and a contract signing, maybe that's enough if it means I could start or play for a team that I could sign a long-term contract with. I don't know if he keeps that 7.5 million if he signs with another team, but if he does, it's kind of brilliant on Jimmy's part.
Yeah, going off what you're saying, where it's like he was classy through the whole thing, but now he has to go after me, and that's what athletes should do. NFL contracts aren't guaranteed. Like, he needs to take care of his next paycheck, take care of his next location he'll be playing in, and so I don't really have a problem in what he's been doing this offseason, even if the surgery wasn't 100% necessary. Get your body right for 2022, where you need to win a starting quarterback job. And
yeah,
he doesn't care, or he shouldn't care what he's traded for if he's traded or if he's released.
Right.
That shouldn't matter to him that, he only went for a 5th round pick or whatever. Like, he has to get his body right. So yeah, get the surgery. That's all good on my part.
Absolutely. James Coombs posts a question for us. If 49ers can't trade him to plans, do you think they restructure and extend to try to raise value again, or just post June 1st cut? What do you think, man?
Just going off of, I think, what they've done in the past and how it's going to be, I think they would just cut him if they can't find a trade partner. But I strongly doubt that they aren't able to find a trade partner. I think if he was to be released, it would be because they're doing Jimmy a solid and saying, we'll let you pick where you want to go. And that's happened in the past a lot of times in the NFL, where you could get a 6 or a 7 for the guy, but you release him, let him pick where he wants to go. And that's just the way it works. And players and coaches are all on the same page on that front. And so I could see them releasing him if there ends up not being a trade market, like you were touching on. If that shoulder surgery does not work out well, or he does not rebound from it, and they're still holding on to him, I would think they would just release him. I don't think they would restructure him and keep him around for another year.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I think the value for the 49ers is cap room 1, and whatever they get back in trade assets is 2. So if the trade assets aren't there, I still think they need that cap room, so they just cut them. I hope that the 49ers don't want to go through this whole, is Jimmy starting, is Trey starting again for another season? I know you don't, Mav. I know I don't. But I doubt the 49ers really care what we think. But I'm sure the fan base would like just like a clean split so that we could go into trade season and just be behind him 100% versus going back and forth about who the starter should be. So let's move on. Um, Rich Scangarello a few days ago, I guess earlier this week, left for a college position. I think he's an offensive coordinator now. So I guess a promotion as far as he has more responsibility with the team. Already we saw, obviously, Mike McDaniels leave for head coaching position with Miami. He ended up taking Wes Welker as well as the tight end coach. It seems like a lot of the coaches from the offensive side, if not all of them, kind of left for other opportunities. I think Bobby Turner is the only one who's just stepping away to take care of some health issues, but he should be back, I guess, in a year. But this is a little bit different from what we've seen. Even when Saleh left left for his job, he didn't take a whole bunch of coaches with him. He took a few coaches here and there. But this is like the most, as far as on one side of the ball, that we've seen leave at one time. Are you reading anything deep into this, Mav? Or what's your take on hearing about all these coaches leaving and really it just being Shanahan that's left from the offensive regime from last year?
Well, I think that just shows how quality of a staff that Kyle Shanahan had and how smart Kyle Shanahan is, that teams just want to take the guys that have just been around him. Similar to after the Rams went to that first Super Bowl, the Goff Super Bowl, where it seemed like every single one of Sean McVay's assistants or Kyle Shanahan, someone that was near one of those two guys, was getting a head coaching job. And like you said, Scangarello getting all these guys are getting upgrade jobs or more responsibilities in their new jobs. So Shanahan's still the leader of the offense. They still have their captain. They're going to be moving to a new quarterback, obviously, but they still have their offensive line captain. They still have their two offensive captains in Kittle and Juszczyk. There's still a lot of leaders on this team. And then bringing in Anthony Lynn, that's huge because Anthony Lynn not only has head coaching experience, but he has history with a great running game. We know Shanahan loves having a good running game. And he has a history of finding good late round running backs that really excel under his system. His play calling might not be the best, but I strongly doubt Anthony Lynn is going to be the play caller anyways. It's probably going to be Shanahan again. And then Anthony Lynn as possibly the OC or whatever role they're going to have him on. But I could see a big jump for Elijah Mitchell. I could see a big jump for Trey Lance, especially with Anthony Lynn there. And then another rookie coming in and having a good season because Lynn's on the staff.
Yeah, and I mean, James Coons, my tin hat, is telling me that we might see a bit of a new offense for Trey. And I tend to think it's more about that, honestly, Mav. I think that for as much of an offensive genius that Shanahan is, and I think he's proved with his play calling and his scheming that he obviously has earned that title. This offense has been anemic at times. And I think that it's kind of gotten to a point where maybe it's a little bit stagnant because you start looking at the fourth quarter performances in the playoffs, and we're talking about very little to no points on a consistent basis. And there have been times that I know we've been watching the game and just being like, how come this offense can't move the ball down the field? Right. And it's really been about a very stout defense that has a lot of times bailed the offense out as far as just keeping the game close till they could figure it out. And I think Kyle Shanahan has matured quite a bit as a coach. And I think he's become more of an introspective guy, more of a humble guy than he used to be. And I think if he's honest with himself, he look himself in the mirror and he says, look, our offense has to be better. Like, we can't just keep banking on our defense to keep teams that are originally scoring 30 points a game to like 17 or like 15 or like 21, because that's what this defense was doing to keep these 49ers in games. And, I looked at the losses from last season in the regular season map, and there was 5 losses that were within 1 score. And then we look even at the NFC Championship game, they lost by 3. And all of those are talking about one extra drive that the offense could have made to either tie the game or take the lead, right? And I think if I was Shanahan, I'm looking at that, I'm like, what do I need to do to just take that extra step with this offense where now those 1-score games become in our favor, right? And I think you're right, bringing in a guy like Anthony Lynn, who isn't just going to be a yes man to Kyle Shanahan, because his success in this league wasn't tied to Shanahan. He's had success outside of Kyle Shanahan, being a coach, running, having really great running games that he's been the offensive coordinator under, or, the head coach under. I think that's a big step forward for the 49ers. And I'm actually open to seeing all of these coaching changes, because I do think that sometimes we over promote how good this offense has been because of previous success. But when push comes to shove, a lot of these games shouldn't have been as close as they were, even the wins, because the offense got stagnant. And a lot of these games that ended up being losses should have been wins because the offense was stagnant. And I hope that maybe some new blood in the coaching realm for the offense brings that extra jolt of energy to the 49ers offense that could actually elevate their game to where now they're that dominant offense that we all expect. And then that defense is just a cherry on top versus the opposite way.
Yeah, I get that. I get what you're saying. And that's a good point on just like getting the fresh blood in and just having Anthony Lynn and maybe some new coaching staff that also could see a change in personnel and philosophy. I know some people aren't always happy with the backup tight ends or happy with what the production for the backup offensive lineman or whatever you say. Mm-hmm. And having coaches from outside of this system will help diversify those positions.
Yeah. And I mean, also maybe some of the decision making that Kyle Shanahan has made late in games, as far as going for it on a 4th and 1 or not going for it on a 4th and 1, or, hey, we have our punter as our kicker, let's go for a field goal instead of going for it on 4th down. Like, decisions like that. Maybe there's somebody else now, like an Anthony Lynn or whomever else they bring in, that could be like, hey, bro, like, why don't we think this one through before, just making a decision like this. Those little decisions could be the difference between, maybe a 12-13 win season and a first round bye versus, again, making it in the playoffs, squeaking in and, having to go on the road every single game. So it could play big dividends. I think it's just about that time where they need to kind of bring in some fresh blood and see what it does as far as shake up the offense. Like you said, they're already getting a new quarterback that obviously has some attributes that previous quarterbacks haven't had. So let's bring in some great minds to see how we could get the best out of this offense. Cool. Well, let's talk about specifics with the team right now. Obviously, this team is very much so built in the trenches. Offensive line is what drives this running attack, which obviously this is a run-first team. The defensive line is the heart of the defense. It's built from the defensive line on back. Now, both of these sides of the ball have a lot of free agents that may be very, how do you put it, like intriguing or attractive to other teams. And obviously the 49ers, this is a salary cap league. So you can't just bring back everybody if everybody's, looking for top dollar. But based off of the free agents that we have and based off of what you see this team as far as who they've been able to bring in, develop, so on and so forth, and who they have under contract, what is a bigger issue for you, Matt? Are you more afraid of the offensive line or the defensive line of this team in this upcoming season?
Well, I think you're going to touch on the O-line. My one concern with the O-line is just, I'll keep it simple, Laken Tomlinson. If they don't bring him back, I'm very concerned about that. But I'm very concerned about the defensive line, just the depth of it. I think that's the biggest part of the 49ers. Yeah, they have the stars up front with Bosa, Armstead, and Ebukam will be back, those three. But in my opinion, I think they're going to lose DJ Jones. I don't think they'll be able to bring back all the role players as well. Mo Hurst, we didn't really see last year, so that's not that big of a loss in this sense. But Arden Key was a huge part of last year. Jordan Willis was definitely a big part. Contavious Street was also a big part. And then Kevin Givens is a restricted free agent, an exclusive rights restricted free agent. So that's a lot of depth that they could lose. And they're kind of banking on a healthy season from Javon Kinlaw to take on the production lost with DJ Jones. And that's the only in-house chance of really doing that. So they either need Javon Kinlaw to really step up and partner with Armstead and the rest of that interior line, or they need to go back to the bargain bin like they did with Arden Key, Jordan Willis, and get those guys to fill in on that interior rush, because I think that's what took the Niners defense from a pretty good defense to the reason why they made the NFC Championship.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the defensive line was stellar this season and a big reason why this team won as many games as it won. I just have so much belief in Kosteric, and I think that this is just a destination for defensive linemen. They know, like, guys that are maybe fringe or guys that are just like feel like maybe they're 1 year away, one big season away from getting big money, really look at the 49ers as a destination just because they've seen it springboard so many D linemen's ability to get contracts, and I just feel like they'll be able to, the 49ers are just so good at identifying talent without having to use much assets. Like, they got Jordan Willis for like a sixth and a seventh, right? And they got Omenahu for, I think a 6th round pick. And these are guys that came in and contributed, and that, I believe they could find more guys like that, or even bring back, guys like that as well that could fill a role. Now, obviously, losing a guy like DJ Jones, that's a big loss. That's a guy who played extremely, extremely well. But I'm very confident in this regime's ability to identify talent and develop talent on the defensive line. Where I am not very secure or very confident in is that same ability on the offensive line, Mav. And when you look at this offensive line, the best linemen that we have are not people that this team was able to draft, are not people that this team was able to develop. These are guys that they found already developed and traded for or signed in free agency from other teams. Trent Williams was not drafted by us. It was traded for by us. Laken Tomlinson was not drafted by us. We traded for him. Alex Mack was not drafted by us. We signed him in free agency. Those were our 3 best offensive linemen last season. We obviously picked high a few years ago for Mike McGlinchey. A lot of people are up and down on him. I think he wasn't, a top 10 pick, but he's, serviceable. I think he's fine at right tackle. He does really well as far as his run blocking prowess. Maybe could be a little better in his pass blocking, but at least he's been a starter every single year. But you look at Aaron Banks. They picked Aaron Banks, moved up for him in the 2nd round, and passed on a guy like Creed Humphreys. Looking back, just based off of last year, who would you have rather had? Obviously, Creed Humphreys, right? They picked Javon Kinlaw when there was a guy, Trenton Wirfs, that was there, that obviously is having a really great career with Tampa Bay. So I just don't believe that this team has shown an aptitude to really find guys in the draft and develop guys either. James Coombs said Banks and Moore, obviously these are the 2 guys that they drafted last season. These guys have to step up. And are you as confident that the offensive line coach can coach up an Aaron Banks and a Moore who seems so raw? Moore played. He had some nice moments. Banks never even really saw the field. Or are you more comfortable with Kosteric taking same fringe type of talent and making them producers? To me, I think both of us would agree, Kosteric in that defensive line can do so much more with less. And I don't know if you can have that same mentality with the offensive line, which is why I'm more afraid of the offensive line. What do you say to that, Mav?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying with Kosteric's ability to improve the defensive line and find those bargain guys and make them better. What I was going at is just getting that depth. It is important in finding those guys that fit into that puzzle. I think the offensive line strategy this offseason is pretty simple. I think they must, I've been saying this the whole time, they must re-sign Laken Tomlinson. And I think we're going to touch on that later, kind of on splurging on free agents. Mm-hmm. That's my number 1 point, is get Laken Tomlinson back at whatever the cost. I'm assuming Aaron Banks is never going to start an NFL game until he proves me otherwise. I mean, he obviously still has potential and talent. They wouldn't have taken him where they did if he had zero talent. He's talented. I just am kind of over the philosophy of assuming a guy's going to play until we really see anything from him. Like we saw more from Trey Lance last year as a backup quarterback than we did as from an offensive lineman who should have played a lot last year. The no-brainer last year should have been them moving Daniel Brunskill to right tackle when McGlinchey went down and Aaron Banks going at right guard. But he was unable to take that on, so they weren't able to do that. But yeah, if they're able to re-sign Laken Tomlinson, they have 4 spots of 5 secured. I think Colt McKivitz and Jalen Moore were very solid 6th and 7th men. So that just leaves, are you sticking with Brunskill at right guard? And then you have your 5 taken care of. That's kind of where I was going.
Yeah, but as of now, Mav, they only have 1 locked up, and that's Trent Williams, right? Laken Tomlinson's a big question mark. We still don't know what Alex Mack is going to do, if he's going to retire, come back. Brunskill is a free agent. McGlinchey is coming off of an injury. Banks, we don't know what he's going to be. Moore, we don't know what he's going to be. And then you talked about, McKivitz and Compton. I don't know. I think there's just way more question marks on the offensive line side. And like I said, I just don't have the confidence that they know how to plug it with young guys and just guys like, I don't think they could just get a 7th round, a 6th round, and get the right guy. I think that they have to kind of swing big and, we'll see, man. I do trust this regime, but that's where it gives me the most pause, to be honest. Well, let us move on. You kind of segued to it. Obviously, with a lot of free agents there on the market, there's a lot of free agents that aren't even on our team, right? So there's more to just the free agents that we have. Where do you see, do you think that the 49ers should splurge on anybody? And the reason why I'm asking this question, Mav, I think this is the first year in a while where the 49ers are actually pretty solid on all levels of the ball. We talked about the offensive and defensive line, like not having studs or like having a lot of question marks, but they still have studs. They still have Trent Williams there. Nick Bosa's there. Eric Armstead's there. Ebicom still, so they still have some key components there, which wasn't the same before. The linebacker core is good. I feel like we're much better at cornerback this offseason than last offseason. Safeties, we still have studs there. Running backs, receivers. It seems like on every single level, we do have great players. So maybe that's a time where we can splurge a little bit, right? Because we don't have to just settle or plug a need. We can kind of go for best player available, or maybe even throw some money out there to get somebody to upgrade. Is there anybody out there that you see that the 49ers should splurge on, and why would you spend that money on that person?
So outside of the free agents on the 49ers that we already kind of touched on, I'm just talking overall guys like on the other 31 teams. A couple guys I'm interested. I've been writing this for, I think, 3 years now. I really like Rasul Douglas. He was with Green Bay by the end of the year. He's a tall, physical corner. He was the one who punked AJ Green on Thursday Night Football and got that win. I'm totally down to bring him in, add size to our cornerback unit. Mosley and Ambry Thomas are both very talented, in my opinion, but they don't really have that big physical size that Douglas would bring. So that's one guy I'm interested. I don't think that would be splurging, really. I think he'd be under $4 million, and that's a worthy contract to dish out if they're able to do that. And then other guys, I've been looking at corners and defensive line depth for the most part. The other 2 corners I like are Desmond King, who I think would be able to kind of take over K'Wan Williams' spot in the slot. And then also he's a pretty good punt returner, so that kind of fills 2 needs the Niners have. And then the last one is I like Dante Jackson with the Carolina Panthers. He's much better in Ron Rivera's defense, in my opinion, than he has been, or he was the last couple of years. But he corner defense, which had Mill.
I think we might be losing Mav. I think you turned into a transformer. Is that on me?
I think my...
But all right. I think, yeah, we're good now. I think it's me.
I can hear you when you're unmuted. Sorry, I'm into after those three guys.
Is it happening for me too? Okay. Does it sound like robot? Robot. All right. I hear you. Hey, guys in the comment section, do we sound like robots or do we sound normal? Oh, I guess Mav, you might. Yeah. All right, cool. So, yeah, Mav had some technical difficulties. He turned into a Autobot overnight. I think he's gonna come back in, but he talked a little bit about. Let's see, Mav, how you sounding now?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Mav is back. You're not. You're no
apologize.
longer.
I don't know what happened. Am I a robot still?
Nah, you're good now. It sounds clear.
Okay, so I don't know where it cut out, but yeah, Dante Jackson, he was with Carolina, Desmond King, and Rasul Douglas are the three corners I'm into.
Sick. So you want to splurge on corner. I want to splurge also on defense. I think that obviously people are talking about JC Jackson, Gilly Locks out there, Kyle Fuller. You obviously spoke about, three corners there that sound appealing. I'm actually thinking about splurging, Mav. And when I'm talking about splurging, you just talked about, this defensive line is going to have some free agents that may leave. And if I want to splurge, what do I think would make the biggest impact on this defense? And I think that is bringing in another edge rusher to pair with Nick Bosa and make this like just a phenomenal defensive line. And I know, I think Coombs put out there, Von Miller. I know there's some other guys that are out there, but the guy that I would love to spend some money on that I think would be phenomenal for this team for a couple of reasons. It weakens an NFC West foe, and also just a guy who's been able to perform, and that's Chandler Jones. I would love to spend some money to bring in Chandler Jones, pair him with Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, and you could insert anybody into that fourth spot on the defensive line. And I think you're just talking about a defensive line that's just going to eat no matter who's on the offensive line. I think offenses would just be so scared. And I think that elevates the play of the linebackers. That's going to make the corners better. That's going to make the safeties better. I could just imagine so many more turnovers, sacks, all these types of things. So if I'm going to splurge, I think that finding a guy, even if he could only play for a year or two, to just pair with Nick Bosa and just get the most out of this defensive line and, go win a Super Bowl, man. Like, go win a Super Bowl when you have the money that you have because you don't have to pay a starting quarterback. Go get that. Go spend it on a defensive line. Go out there and get two guys that are going to have double-digit sacks. And I think that would just be so fun to watch as a 49er fan.
I would love that. My big idea last season before the Trey Lance trade was let Trent Williams go, draft Rashawn Slater in the first round, and use that money on Shaq Barrett. And that's what I really wanted the Niners to do last season. So I'm all for going and getting another edge rusher and making a feared duo like the Rams had this season.
Yeah. And I mean, there are some guys that I think maybe you don't have to pay the $15 million a year to, but like a guy like JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul, I don't think that he's going to want to come back to Tampa Bay with no Tom Brady. He might be on the market, and he would be somebody that I think could fit in really nice with the 49ers. Calais Campbell's out there. I don't know if he's maybe too old, but he might be somebody that could bring some stuff to the team. So it would be nice. I know that some people are saying go in the draft and try to get somebody with your second round pick that could be an edge. I haven't done a deep dive into the draft yet, but I haven't really seen anybody that in the second round that I feel like could come out and just make a huge impact for this team. So I would rather just go find somebody in free agency that you could bring in, because I think that would be awesome to have just two guys that are feared on either side of the defensive line. Anything else? Anybody else that you could think of, Matt, that you would want to splurge on?
Yeah, pretty much. Interior line, what you were kind of going off of is something I don't know if you would splurge on, because outside of Lake and Tomlinson, there's not really that guy that you want to go grab for left guard, right guard. But role players are like James Daniels, I think is a really talented offensive lineman. He can also play center. He was with Chicago, and he could take on that Daniel Brunskill right guard center combo deal for the Niners if they wanted to go grab him. And then Dan Feeney is a underwhelming guard, but he's a mauler, and that's, I think, kind of what they were looking for with Aaron Banks. So having a guard like that can maul someone next to Mike McGlinchey might be something they're interested in. And so that's one guy I would kind of look at.
I like it. It's going to be fun, man. This is the fun part where you just get to kind of just throw out ideas and stuff like that. And, in a few weeks, free agency is going to start, and, we're going to actually see some names that get brought in. But I like all the names you're talking about. We shall see what happens. But let's kind of stray away for some 49er news, and let's talk about this, which was big news. I mean, a few weeks ago, Kyler Murray scrubbed his Instagram and took off everything that had to do with the Arizona Cardinals. People thought it was much ado about nothing. Me being, a conspiracy theorist that I am, I was like, oh my goodness. The Cardinals were trying to trade for Aaron Rodgers, and Kyler Murray found out about it, and he got upset and now splurged or cleaned his Instagram. But now a letter comes out from his agent, a strongly worded letter, to say the least, and was kind of just out of nowhere. Like, I've never seen it. I've never seen something like this in my life. So, Mav, what do you make of this Kyler Murray letter? What was your initial thoughts, and how do you read into it? I guess how it moves forward for the Cardinals. It was
it was a very good amount of petty. I enjoyed it. It was the most amount of petty you could go to without going on the Pat McAfee show. Speaking of Rodgers, and hey, like, I'm all for that. As James Coombs is saying right there, never trust anything Kyler Murray's doing, because if you take him, even if you take him in the MLB draft, he'll never play a game for you. So just everything that happens with Kyler Murray, I get a little nervous about. But yeah, starting with when he won the Heisman and just seeing like the dynamic he had with his dad and him, I thought it would be an interesting time with Kyler Murray, whatever team was lucky enough to select him, because he's very talented. I did not think it would go this route before he won a playoff game, especially the way they lost that playoff game. This was an interesting route, but he's a top 15 quarterback, no doubt. He could end up being a top 5 quarterback by the end of next year, especially with kind of the last wave of quarterbacks riding off into the sunset right now. Kyler Murray is one of the leading candidates to take over that top 5 role. So go get your money, man. And the Cardinals, your Aaron Rodgers thing was funny, because I've been joking with my friends. This is in no way going to happen, but I've been joking, saying, like, how cool would a Madden trade or MLB style trade of Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins to Green Bay for Rodgers, Adams on the franchise tag, and Aaron Jones?
that sounds crazy.
Quarterback. They get DeAndre Hopkins. They get all that cap space off, especially because they have A.J. Dillon, who was outplaying Aaron Jones at times last year. So they get that big running back contract off the books.
Right.
And Arizona gets to go all in with Rodgers, Adams, and Aaron Jones. That's not going to happen, but
keep thinking of how fun that would be if that happened in real life. Obviously, there might need to be a couple draft picks involved if that were to happen, but it won't. So it's all good. That's all I think about with this.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm all about the players getting money. Like, go get as much money from these teams as possible. I know a hot dog isn't getting any cheaper. A beer isn't getting any cheaper. Parking's not getting any cheaper. These tickets aren't getting any cheaper. So if my money's going to be taken from these teams anyways, we're getting fleeced anyways, I'd rather it go into the pockets of the players than the pockets of the owners, right? They're already billionaires and multi-millionaires. My thing about this is just tactics. Like, I could understand if it was a team that looks like they're not trying, right? I look at the team like the Cincinnati Bengals. They still play outdoors they don't have an indoor practice facility, even though it snows there most of the NFL season, off season. I look at a team like that, and so if Joe Burrow is like, yo, you got to do more for me, I can understand that, because that team has always been a team that seems to be cheap, right? But the Arizona Cardinals, since Kyler Murray has been there, have brought in DeAndre Hopkins, have brought in AJ Green, have brought in James Conner, drafted, Rondell Moore, have brought in JJ Watt,
Rodney Hudson at center.
Rodney Hudson, like, they're going all in to give Kyler Murray everything that I guess a quarterback would need to be able to make a playoff push and a Super Bowl push. And look, granted, Kyler Murray has had a phenomenal 3 years. The numbers he's put up are untouched by, pretty much anybody in the league, not named maybe Patrick Mahomes. But his first three years have been phenomenal. But he's only 3 years in. There's no reason for them to pay him, because he's still going to get paid pretty decent money. So I'm looking at it, and it's like the wording of the letter was like, I need you to show me that you're trying to win a Super Bowl. And I'm like, bruh, like, that doesn't make any sense, because there's nothing about what they're doing that makes me believe that they're not trying to win a Super Bowl. In fact, if they just go out and give you the $50 million contract right now, which I believe that eventually he's going to get either from the Cardinals or somebody else, it's like they're not going to be able to do all these things that they're doing right now. Like, that means they're not going to be able to bring in the high-level talent. They're not going to be able to bring all that kind of stuff. So to me, it's just like Kyler is trying to seem like he's this altruistic, I'm just here because I want to win type of mentality, when it's really just, I need to get paid. And that's where I don't understand the tactics. It's like, you could have done this behind the scenes. You could have done this, without it getting out in the media, but you forced this into the media. You wanted everybody to know that, hey, I've taken this team farther than any other quarterback has done. This is what my first 3 years has been. I've been 2-time Pro Bowl and all this kind of stuff. And I just, even though it's all facts, and even though I do deserve that he needs, like, based off of what everything is, like, the next best player of a certain position is going to get paid more than the last best player of a certain position. So he deserves to get, push the needle forward as far as quarterback contract. It's just like, one, there's no need for them to do it right now. They could wait a year and do it. And two, it's just like, the tactics, you don't come off as humble. You don't come off as like the altruistic person that you're trying to be. That's just what I don't understand. It just seems like it's creating more drama. It's creating just more about me type of situation when you're trying to act like your team. That coupled with his body language usually isn't the best body language anyways. It's just like, I don't know. I just don't understand the tactics. I don't know why somebody would advise him to go this route.
Yeah, it's kind of just looking at his dynamic with his dad at the Heisman ceremony, like the awkwardness with that, it kind of gave me Odell Senior vibes from this past year with his tweets to get Odell released. And if this letter felt similar to that in a way, obviously not the same amount of pettiness as Odell Senior with the the Twitter videos showing Baker Mayfield not even looking at OBJ's direction. But it was an interesting tactic, like you said. And the one thing I could see as the Cardinals not trying to win, in Kyler Murray's opinion, is maybe he doesn't like Cliff Kingsbury and he wants a quote unquote real head coach or a better head coach. And he's seeing these teams go after the Sean McVay style offenses while Cliff Kingsbury's running this awkward air raid that does a bunch of curls, where if DeAndre Hopkins isn't healthy, the offense has nothing it can do to move the chains. So that's the only alternative I could see for Kyler Murray. Going off of what you're saying, I agree with everything you're saying. Maybe it's he just doesn't want Cliff Kingsbury to be the head coach, but I feel like we would have heard that from Adam Schefter or something by now if that was the idea. So it is a very out of the Kyler Murray, the center fielder. This is very out of left field for him. So it's all good.
I don't know if I got bamboozled into something, but did the Cardinals re-up Cliff Kingsbury today?
Did they?
I have to look that up. If anybody in the chat knows, I don't know if that was a joke or if that actually happened.
We've reached a contract extension with Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury, which I think both are. So now we'll see what Kyler said.
So and here's the other thing that was kind of interesting. The same agent that's Kyler Murray's agent is also Cliff Kingsbury's agent. So that's when you bring it up, what you're bringing up, that doesn't make too much sense because they're represented by the same thing. And Cliff Kingsbury just got re-upped. So,
well, maybe that's what it was then, is the exact opposite of what I was saying, is he wanted Cliff to go get his money.
And he's still trying to get his money. Maybe Kyler Murray's just trying to blow up the organization. Who knows? But yeah, I mean,
you should be happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm kind of glad that we just don't have to deal with that right now. Like, it actually, I saw some people tweeting this, and it bodes true for me as well. It's nice to see how Jimmy Garoppolo handled a very, very, I guess, inauspicious, like very kind of hostile environment around him being the starting quarterback, and just how much times he was shopped and how many times they brought in replacements or were talking about bringing in replacements. He carried it with class throughout. And now we're seeing, I don't think necessarily Kyler Murray, I'm not trying to knock his style or anything like that. I don't want to put any type of judgment on him. I'm just glad that we don't have to deal with that. We didn't have to deal with that type of stuff. How it works out for Kyler Murray, like I said, I'm all about him going to get the bag. Go get your $50 million a year, my dude. And keep sticking it to these owners. Get as much money as you can out of them. Fortunately, there is a salary cap, so you getting your money means somebody else doesn't get theirs. That's just unfortunately the nature of the beast. But it was something that was interesting, man, to see a letter of just somebody touting their like, it was like, this is how good I am. This is what I've done for you. Pay me my money. Oh, by the way, it's because I only want to win. It's like, okay. Come on, my guy.
Yeah. The best part was like the bullet points at the beginning,
and I didn't like the all caps. I'm just like, yo, you couldn't have picked a better font. Like, what are we doing here? I love it. Well, go ahead, Matt.
No, he just needs a better graphic designer. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, maybe the same person that did his Instagram did his letter too, and they needed he needs an upgrade at that. Maybe they need to give him money because he's obviously not hiring the right type of people for him. Cool. Well, Mav, great show again. I do want to give you some time. Where can these fans find you? What do you have going on? Any more articles coming out, or is it still just baseball? I mean, I guess there's not much because there is the strike. I don't know if that affects the River Cats or whatever.
Well, yeah. Well, just to touch on that, minor league baseball season is happening. So
okay, cool.
Don't worry about that. We are good to go. So if you're missing baseball, head on out to your local minor league club. But yeah, at Maverick Pallack on Twitter, that's where most of my stuff goes. We'll have more time to write for all 49ers SI soon. Just gearing up for the minor league baseball season right now. So once that's kind of set in motion, then I'll get to go back to my weekly articles, which I always look forward to. River Cats are still in Sacramento.
And, James, if you didn't know, we have one of the big timers with the River Cats here. Mav is very modest, but he just got a promotion. What's your title now? You're head of.
Oh, I'm communications coordinator. So if anything you see written on the website, come give us a favorite every time you see it. That helps me out.
Absolutely. Definitely do that. I love that Mav's growing, and he's going to be pretty soon working for the A's and be too big time to come on this show. So I try to get him as much as possible till he's too big time for me. But guys, thank you so much for joining us. I love all of you guys in the comment sections. You really make this show go. Thank you so much for the likes, the subscriptions. Please keep coming to the show. We're doing our best to keep the content flowing. And like we always say, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll talk again very, very soon. Have a good night, everybody.